Okay, let us begin. A very happy new year to you all. And one of the things that happens at the start of the year is there's a bit of looking back and there's a bit of looking forward. And what I hope and pray is that we are going to be inspired by the past, by people that have walked with God in the past, so that today and every day in 2024 we may walk with God and to be blessed. Here is a few verses from Jeremiah chapter 6 that says, this is what the Lord says: stand at the crossroads, which sometimes at the beginning of the year you feel that there may be decisions to make. What sort of person are we called to be in 2024? Stand at the crossroads and look and ask for the ancient paths. Learn from the past. Learn from people in the past. The idea that everything has to be new and wonderful and different from the past, while there is some truth in that, some of what went on in the past is absolute gold dust. There are people in the past who got things spot on and we need to learn from it, which is incidentally why we're going to be doing Genesis, the grown-ups, up until Easter, because there's something right back at the beginning of the Bible that is complete gold dust and we need to hear. So the Lord says to us at the beginning of 2024, ask for the ancient paths where the good way lies. If you want to have a good new year, then look to what we know of God, in particular in the Bible, and walk in it. And if you do that, you will find rest for your souls. And I know that I've just been talking to some people for whom this year has not started well. And I'm afraid I cannot promise you that everything's going to be fine. You're going to have perfect health for 365 days, that there's going to be no problems. But somewhere in our souls, we hope we will have peace if we trust the Lord. Anyway, I hope that happens. I've got a version of Auld Lang Syne here. You'll notice in verse 2 it says, we'll take a cup of kindness yet. It's to the tune of Auld Lang Syne. But it's saying that whatever happens this year, the ways of Jesus and the person of Jesus will shine through. Whatever our health is going to be, whatever our circumstances are going to be, Jesus is going to be Jesus, and that's going to be great because we're going to celebrate in the glory of Jesus. Do stand or sit to sing this cracking good song. Do have a seat. As well as being the first Sunday of the new year, it's also Epiphany, or it was yesterday. And we have a regional minister in the Baptist Church, Gail, who said to me just before Christmas, churches ought to make more of Epiphany. So I've been told by my regional minister, who's equivalent to a bishop in the Baptist Church, that we need to celebrate the fact that the good news isn't just for Jews, okay? And we are beneficiaries of this because I don't think there are many people who think themselves as being Jewish in our church congregation. In fact, I think we are almost 100% Gentiles. And when I'm going to read this passage from Isaiah chapter 42. Actually, if you want to join in with me, you can. Personally, if I was you, I'd want to read it as well. But you can just listen. When it talks about the nations, it's talking about us. If it talks about the islands in verse 4, there's people on the mainland, the Jews in Israel, and then there's the people in the islands, which are the Gentiles, everyone else. And God's servant, so in Isaiah 42, which is Jesus, that we know from later in the New Testament. God's servant is to bring good news to all people, to bring light to the earth, the whole earth, and that's something to celebrate. So if you'd like to either listen or read with me from Isaiah 42. Here is my servant Jesus, whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break. A smouldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness and quietness he will bring forth justice, and he will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice throughout the earth. In his teaching the islands will put their hope. I, the Lord, have called you my servant in righteousness, and I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles. To open eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. Let's therefore sing to the Lord a new song. Okay. As I'm not sure whether I've said this, we are doing Genesis from now until Easter, partly because we haven't done many readings in the last 11 years from this book of the Bible, so that's what we're doing. The way in which I want to deal with this first chapter is basically to spend most of the time just listening to it. To some of these words, they become alive as we allow the truths, the ancient truths that Jeremiah was speaking about, to permeate our souls. However, what I'd like to do is to give you an idea of the sort of things to look out for. And also, is that as I'm just going through, I think there are 8 of them, the things that I find speak to me. If you think, yeah, but wait a minute, I don't understand that, ask the questions. Just put your hand up and throw a microphone in your direction. It may or may not work. But anyway, one of the big messages for me of Genesis 1 is the second verse. So verse 1 says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. God created everything. Okay. And God was there in the beginning. It sort of goes along with the Big Bang, it seems to me, that there was a beginning. Yeah. There isn't a conflict between science and religion. At this particular point, it seems to me. But anyway, verse 2 says, and the rest of this chapter says, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good. And some of our experiences of life on planet Earth is, it's not good, it's not good. Just look at the news, it's not good. You know. And it's there in verse 2 for me. So God creates the heavens and the earth in verse 1. And verse 2, for me, is deeply unsatisfactory. The earth was formless. There was an emptiness about it. There was darkness about it. There was the scary bits of the earth, the deep waters, the deep. And I know that this is only verse 2, and maybe that's all addressed by the rest of the chapter, and that God then fills it and does light and creates earth and the plants and the animals and whatever. So a way of listening to verse 2 is that it was formless and empty, and there was darkness, and there was the face of the deep, okay, but no longer, okay? And that's actually valid reading of this. I'm just showing you with my reading of it, is that I find sometimes life, I confront an emptiness. I confront darkness. I confront scary things that I'm deeply uncomfortable with. And the gospel for me, and I love this verse, is that the Spirit of God was hovering above the deep waters, the scary bits, where the darkness is. That's where the Spirit of God is. For me, that sounds like Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. The Spirit of God is brooding on the face of the waters. He was right at the beginning. He is now, and he always will be. And for me, this is the cross, is that where the worst thing ever that happens to somebody who's completely innocent, completely good, standing in front of his mother, facing an early death, facing excruciating pain, being double-crossed by a friend. I mean, just all the litany of all the worst things that can possibly happen were happening to Jesus, and the Spirit of God was brooding on the face of the waters so that he could say, Father, forgive them. Son, behold your mother, mother, behold your son. Into your hands, Father, I commend your spirit. Now, there was the moment where he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because he was at the beginning of this verse saying, oh, it's all dark, it's all deep, it's all scary. And Jesus was feeling God wasn't there, but the majority of the cross is partly Jesus was there, so the Spirit of Jesus was there on the cross. So for me, the whole of the gospel is there in verse 2. So you can stop reading the Bible after the second verse. It's all there. Now, we do need a bit more detail, so I am encouraging you to read the rest of the Bible again. But for me, it's a phenomenal verse, and it means a lot to me, and I come back to it so that when I'm dealing with my own distresses and when I'm sharing the distress of other people, God is with us in dark times. And if you remember nothing else from Genesis chapter 1, I hope that you hold to that during the coming year. Anybody want to get back at me on that and to say yes, but, or that doesn't work, or how about? You don't have to. There's 8 things, so okay. The way God does creativity, and for me, this section of and again, it's throughout chapter 1 of Genesis, this is how to do parenting. This is how to do management. God says, let this happen. Do this, do that, do that. No. It's not do this, do that. It's God says, let it. And that's now grandchildren. So I want to let my grandchildren grow and develop. And incidentally, when I read Genesis, I find out about God, because at the end of Genesis 1, I'm made in the image of God. This is telling me what my calling is. So I find out what God does, and at the end of the chapter it says, I'm made in the image of God. So this is how I'm called to be. So in my workplace, I am called to be the person who says, let this happen. In your places of influence, that's your job. To be a permissive, creative presence. Let it. I love that. And you'll hear God says, let there be. Sometimes it just says God made, but yes, there's an awful lot of permit, let it happen. And for me, evolution is what that looks like. Things evolve, because that's that's his creative way. People grow and develop and evolve into beautiful people. And it works for the whole of creation too. God says, let it happen, and it happens. Questions, comments? Not quite sure what to make of this one, but there's quite a lot of separation, and according to their kind. Maybe this is sometimes things being different scares us. When you find out that somebody's really quite different to you in the way in which they see that. And that happens to people that you know well, and you suddenly find that they're different. They're quite separate. And you think, oh, that must be bad. And no. God separates. It's good. People being different is good. Animals being different, anyway, just look out for that. It seems to be something that is said. On the subject of being scared by things being different, I think whatever scares you, calling it something is part of the process of not being afraid. So when you come across something, you need to give it a name. So for instance, if we think that darkness is bad, then having a word for daytime is great. And then there's the stuff that just isn't very good and it's very dark and it's bad. Actually giving it a name of God called it night. So land is what we live on because we're not fish. So land, we like land. We give that a name. We also give a name, God also gives a name to the thing that we find difficult. We're not sea-going creatures. He gives it a name, and that means that you can... Also, this works with people. If there's somebody who you think's an idiot, you must call them not idiot, you must call them by name. You can call them Fred, because that's their name. And actually giving them that will... For goodness to take hold, giving things names is important. There's a whole load of stuff in the world that is good, and that God looks for things that are good. I know that some people's reading of Genesis 1 is that for them, Genesis 1 is describing a world where everything was literally good. There was no badness at all within the world that it's been describing. So God says it was good. It's just because, well, it was good. There wasn't anything other than goodness, because badness crops up in chapter 3. And that people at this point see Genesis 1, 2 and 3 as chronological, either at the point of Genesis chapter 1, there wasn't anything bad. I'm not sure that that's the case. I think it's possible that it is describing the world. And there are, even at this point, insects that burrow into people's eyes. And there's a destruction that was possibly in the created order in Genesis chapter 1. It's also possible that there wasn't, that all of the nasty bits of creation, cancerous organisms, didn't evolve until after Genesis chapter 3, and that's a perfectly valid way of reading scripture. But for me, I read chapter 1 as this is God creating the world, and the world, we know it. You can look at the world and say, that's not good, that's not good, that's not good, that's not good. And when God looks at the world, he chooses to look at what is good. He says, that's good. And it's not that there isn't some stuff that isn't good, but what his eye is drawn to is what is good. That's how forgiveness works. That's the heart of the Christian faith. Is that you lot, there's a whole load of sins that you and I have. And I just think God is a Genesis 1 God. God looks at you and sees what is beautiful and good about you. That's not to say that there isn't something bad about you too. Just God chooses to see what is beautiful and good about you. And to do that, he forgives all that is not good about you. That's in the nature of God, that he does not focus on what is bad. He chooses to seek out what is good. And you will notice that on day 6, after he creates people, that he doesn't just say that, looks at people and say they are good. He says they are very good. God, as well as being permissive creativity, part of the creative order is that he blesses, particularly things that are alive, he blesses. We'll just have a note as to what God does bless and what he doesn't bless. And there's, I'm near the end of the things to look out for. There's something about this narrative 6 times says, there was evening and there was morning the first day. There was evening, there was morning. Does it strike you odd that those are in the wrong order? If you were writing Genesis, you'd say, if you were describing a day, you'd say there was the morning, there was the day, the morning and the evening, and then there was you do the morning first and then the evening. In the Hebrew, there was sunset and there was dawn the first day. Now, partly that's because in Jewish thought, the Sabbath begins at sundown on Friday evening. So that's why it's because the beginning of the day is at sunset. It's from sunset to sunrise. And just at the beginning of the year, sometimes we have the day and then we finish the day by going to sleep. I wonder whether when you go to sleep tonight, that's the beginning of Monday. Is that you're having the sleep that will prepare you to do what needs to be done on Monday. This is where you're starting the process of doing Monday. Now, I hope that doesn't make you stop sleeping, because you think, well, all the things I've got to do on Monday, all the things I've got to do on Monday, and that. But actually, no, being at rest, receiving your daily bread or your daily sleep, is part of what will then nourish you for Monday. Anyway, I've not thought about that before, but anyway. And finally, we are created in the image of God. I've said enough. I've asked Mark to read this really nice and slowly so that you may say, yeah, that's the world I live in. And that's who I am. And it says God does these things. We're made in the image of God. This is telling us that there are things about how God does this that we might be called upon to do because we're made in his image. I hope that you really enjoy this, because I do.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it, according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years, and let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, livestock according to their kinds, and the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, and the birds in the sky, over the livestock, and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Michael's going to do day 7 in Genesis chapter 2 next week. There was one comment that I'd not seen before. It's if you look at days 1, 2, 3 along the top, and then 4, 5, 6 along the bottom. Can you see that a way of looking at Genesis 1 is that the making of the places happens on the first 3 days, and then they're populated in days 4, 5, and 6. Now, of course, the moon and the stars were actually already there, but maybe they weren't visible in terms of our atmosphere. And as far as the inhabitants of Earth is concerned, anyway, there's a symmetry between 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 that I've never quite understood why day 4 is where it is. But anyway, the bottom Earth, that's just an aside. Okay, so I'd like to give thanks for our creation. If you'd like to join in the bit at the bottom, because it's my favourite bit of Psalm 104. We thank God for sending rain, actually too much of it at the moment, into the valleys that run along the mountains, and that these Rivers give drink to every animal of the field. The wild donkeys, they quench their thirsts. The birds of the sky nest by them. They sing amongst the branches. He waters the mountains from his rooms up above. And the earth is filled with the fruit of your works. He causes the grass to grow for the livestock and plants for man to cultivate, that he may produce food out of the earth, wine that makes the heart of man glad, oil to make his face shine, and bread that strengthens man's heart. Which is cool. I'm going to, just that we've got time to do communion quickly, I've just omitted one of our songs, and we'll go straight to Jesus is Lord. That I've alluded to the fact that I see Jesus in Genesis chapter 1. I do believe that creation voice proclaims the nature of God, and in particular the nature of Jesus. And as we come to communion, we are celebrating that Jesus is present in our world, and he's done an awful lot for us, which is what the other verses are. So I do stand or sit to sing this. This year, this week, today, may you know the recurrent blessings and goodness of the permissive, relational and varied creativity of God throughout today, throughout this year and forever. Amen. Thank you very much for the pleasure of your company. Wendy and Stuart will be available to sit on the front row to chat and to pray. Do talk to others on Zoom. If you want to speak to somebody on Zoom, use that laptop over there, or speak to people over tea and coffee at the back. Bless you all, and thank you for the pleasure of your company.